Do you ever do that thing when you're drawing expressions and you're making the expression on your face subconsciously while you're drawing that expression? Angry. I'm bloody angry. Draw a really pissed off face. Oh, mate, how happy can you get? Oh, look at this happy guy. He's so happy. Oh, silly. I'm gonna draw a silly face. Look at this silly expression I'm drawing right here. Silly bastard. Yeah, I remember getting some weird looks from people in high school. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza, and today we're going to talk about expressing yourself, both with subtlety and extremity. But not in person, no. Because most artists are introverts, unless they're obnoxious like me. No, we're going to talk about conveying expressions through the characters and illustrations you draw for your comics and cartoons and animations and so on and so forth. Now, this video is a bit of a top 10 tips guide to creating expressions, and some of the tips are going to be pretty broad and some of them are going to be quite detailed and specific. But if you're interested in diving in really deep into creating your own facial expressions and exploring and having fun with faces, as well, that's convenient because I have a digital ebook and a photo reference pack with your name on it. Available on the JAZZA'S shop, the Faces bundle comes with my ebook Draw with Jazza Fun with Faces and my Faces photo reference pack. The Fun with Faces ebook is an in-depth guide to creating all of the parts and pieces of the face and designing characters and expressions that can really help your comics and cartoons come to life. The Faces photo reference pack is a big bundle of a whole bunch of different people that you can use as a reference while learning to amplify and how to draw expressions on your characters. With a variety of different people from old to young, different ethnicities and face types, each is captured on 3 angles, front, 3/4 angle and side angle, and of course with a variety of extreme and subtle expressions. You can get that bundle from the JAZZA'S shop. It's usually 20% off as a bundle anyway, but because I love you, I'm whacking in a coupon code for the first few hundred people who use it to get a further 10% off, making it a little over 30% off of the original item's prices. Just use the coupon code JAZZAFACE and 10% will be taken off of the cost of the anatomy bundle, and you can use that for your enjoyment and your education when learning faces and expressions. That plug aside, let's get into the content of today's video, which is my top 10 tips for faces and expressions when you draw your characters and comics. The first tip is the only one of the tips that isn't actually an illustration tip, but it's an important thing to keep in mind, and that is to use references. And specifically, there is a reference that you have available to you all the time, and it's attached to you. It's your face. Your face. It is actually your face. It's not my face. My face is not attached to your face yet. Does this make you uncomfortable? It may seem like a silly thing to say, but in reality, if you're not quite sure what the eyebrows do when in a certain expression, or what parts of the face move in different ways based on the intensity or the angle, you can either take a photo of your own face or use a mirror, and this is actually really useful, and you'll learn things about your face and facial geometry that you might not otherwise, because you're pulling the exact expression you want to execute, and you can study it in the privacy of no one watching you, which is how I recommend doing it. I wouldn't do this in a public place. Tip number 2. Full-faced expression. See, it can be easy to think of expression as just sort of poses that you use with the eyes and the mouth to convey an emotion. However, every aspect of the face can be involved in an expression. And then more than that, the geometry of the parts of the face, the eyes, the mouth, the nose, the ears and cheeks, push the surface areas of the face and the silhouette of the face around to fit that expression. So bear this in mind when you create your expressions and really pull things around. Later in this video, we're going to touch on some tips and tricks to help you know how to best go about this, but basically keep in mind that if you're opening the mouth, the jaw is being pulled around and the cheeks are going to be affected. If you're scrunching up the eyes, the nose is going to have wrinkles, and creating a full-faced expression isn't just the parts of the face creating that expression, it can also be the head and its rotation and the position that the entire face is in. An expression isn't just the eyes and the mouth, it's the entire face and the head working together to create an intensity and to create interest for the viewer. Tip 3. face and eye position. On the left you see an expression of a somewhat morose looking character. Face looking straight and forward and eyes looking relatively straight and forward as well. But the nuances of this expression and what it can convey to the viewer can be tweaked and almost completely changed depending on whether they're looking up or down, both with the position of the head or with the position of the eyes themselves. Take for example this sketched image of the same expression facing upwards. A head looking up like this looks more confident and has a stronger jawline, the silhouette is more solid, and they look poised and ready for things. So a morose expression can easily become an expression of indifference or boredom, perhaps curiosity or thoughtfulness. But just by bringing the head upwards, we can lose a little bit of that sadness, but it can also strengthen some of the aforementioned expressions. The pupils themselves can create similar changes. Looking up and rested against the top eyelids can create a look of boredom. Looking forward into a blank stare can be a thoughtful look, and then off to the side in an expression that represents something more like apprehension. Doing the opposite, tipping the entire face down, creates a little bit more of a vulnerable look, someone who looks more downhearted, and this can enhance the sadness. And as before, moving the pupil into different areas can create different accentuations of those expressions as well. They're tiny tweaks, but something that can be really worth keeping in mind when you really want to fine-tune and convey something in the most emotionally effective way possible. Tip number 4, scrunch points. What I mean by scrunch points is basically how the geometry of the surface areas of the skin around the core expresses of the face, the eyes and the mouth in particular, move based on how that geometry stretches the skin around it. I'm going to refer to these areas as in and out areas. Coloured in blue in the forehead and the outsides of the mouth, we're going to call the out areas when the eyebrows push up and out away from the centre of the face, likewise with the mouth when it stretches out and down away from the centre of the face. The in areas, coloured in red, represent where the skin scrunches up and creates lines when everything is pulled into the centre of the face. The eyebrows in an angry expression scrunch up the nose. As you can see with the little character on the right, with the mouth pulled out and down away from the face, some lines can appear at the sides of the mouth. Though not technically the geometry of the mouth, an extreme expression in this outwards direction for the mouth can pull that geometry to scrunch up around it, likewise with the top of the eyebrows. Let's look at the sides of the nose and underneath the eyes. When the mouth is pulled up quite high, the cheeks bunch up. As a result, the bottom eyelids pull up over the bottom of the eyes, intensifying the expression, and the edges of the nose create a very faint line. That shows that once again the three-dimensional aspects of the face are being pulled in that direction as well. The final example, and an extremely important and effective one to keep in mind, is when bringing the eyes down and in perhaps an angry expression, you can see the folds of the nose and areas between the brows scrunch up. Go ahead, grab a mirror and do this yourself. Make a really angry expression, as angry a snarl as you can muster, and notice how the skin around the top of your nose and between the eyebrows scrunch together. The moral of the story is to not only keep in mind the core elements that create the expressions, but the way the face wraps around those expressions to enhance them, and how you can use that geometry and lines around the eyes or the mouth and also in the nose to punctuate and add intensity to those expressions. Tip number 5. Eyelid energy. The eyelids can be used to amplify or create a lack of energy. We have on the right a fairly ordinary looking character, and as you can see with my examples on the left, if I were to create an eye with a lowered eyebrow, the energy in that example picture is sort of diminished simply by lowering that eyelid, creating looks of indifference or perhaps sultriness. In the example below it though, when we bring up the lower eyelid, the energy is intensified. Now this is usually as a reaction for the cheeks being pushed up on the face, usually as a result of a smile or an angry expression. But either way, even if you're creating subtle expressions and you're just trying to figure out a way to enhance or intensify that expression, keep in mind that lowering the eyelids will diminish the energy and raising the lower eyelids will increase it. Tip number 6. Pupil power. I'm just having fun with alliteration at this point, I guess, but much like the power of the eyelids, the pupils themselves can intensify an expression. In particular, by creating larger pupils, we can create a look of admiration, eagerness, or happiness that is enhanced,
best, and in reverse, when we create a very small pupil or really shrink it, we can intensify fear, anger, shock, and other such intense emotions. So as you can see me drawing here, two fairly cartoony looking examples with not very detailed eyes, one very happy and one quite angry. Now while those expressions work quite well as they are, and they're easily communicating what I'm trying to create, when I replace the pupils on the happy character on the left with very large pupils glowing with reflections of light, the happy look becomes one of ecstatic joy and even eagerness and looking forward to something or admiring something that they're looking at. And then we have the character on the right whose expression turns from anger into one of pure rage. Rather than just being angry at something, they look like they are about to murder someone. And that can be a useful expression to create sometimes too. Tip number 7. The mouth is a 3D object. It can be easy sometimes to think of the mouth as two-dimensional simply because we sort of think of it as on the front of the face, and especially when creating comic book style mouths or something with a lot of intensity that we want to show a lot of depth in. I like to start off by thinking of the expression I'm trying to create and then think of the teeth as three-dimensional objects inside the skin and as part of the skull behind it. So as you can see here with the blue lines representing the exterior flat geometry and the red sketch of the teeth showing what the teeth look like behind the skin, I go through with a thick line and show what that looks like then when represented in our 2D image as a three-dimensional set of teeth inside a mouth. By approaching it in this way, we create an illustration that looks much more three-dimensional and also a face that is much more engaging. Tip 8. Teeth detail. On the left you can see a little sketch I did of some more detailed teeth. Now, while this isn't incorrect, in fact it's more accurate than the mouths I have been drawing and will be drawing, they're a bit distracting, and if we draw every tooth and all of the details of the mouth and the lips, we end up with something that looks kind of ugly. I prefer the example on the right, something much more streamlined, a simple silhouette, clean lines, and a little bit of glisten by not having a flat line that goes all the way across, but by having a broken line for the middle representing the teeth. Now, while this isn't technically a tip on drawing expressions and is more of a tip on drawing facial feature, it's worth keeping in mind because you can add subtle details to the mouth to help amplify expressions. For example, in a widely stretched mouth, whether in anger or happiness, showing a hint of gums and adding that slight little detail communicates that the mouth is stretched beyond its regular capacity, and just that slight detail helps amp up that expression a little further. Another way that adding a tiny little bit of detail can be effective in use is by adding a little bit of that fang line on the mouth. Now, not actual fangs, but you'll probably realize, again, if you look in that mirror that I've recommended you to look into, if you smile, you'll notice that you have little fang teeth, a couple of teeth across from your middle teeth and the top row of teeth. By very faintly alluding to this little jagged line in the mouth, we can enhance a more villainous expression, something that looks a little more sadistic. This could be a permanent feature of a character design to make them look more villainous overall, but it can also be implemented in single expressions to make a conniving expression more punchy. Tip 9, the order of operations. Now this is obviously down to personal preference. In fact, everything I'm talking about in this video is down to personal preference, but I'm going to share with you the order I like to draw the facial features in when drawing an expression in particular, which I find really helpful, especially when building things step by step to get the most effective result without much pain. First and foremost, we need the head construction. We need to create the basic sketch of a shape to show what direction the head is facing as a very rough foundation to lay the details on. Step number 2, I work in the eyes. The eyes being the windows to a person's soul and the most pivotal part of an expression, it's important to get this down first. It also helps set up the proportions of the face in general and is the first part of reshaping that foundation into something slightly more three-dimensional because the brow and the cheek are shaped around the eye. From there, I move on to the nose. You would think that the mouth is the next best thing to go to because the eyes and the mouth are important for the expression, but the nose is pivotal for the actual shape and construction of the face, and the mouth will be tempting you to move things in a very amplified direction, but it's good to make sure that you have a very solid foundation and clarity set out for the mouth to work around. So that's why I go to the nose next, and then step 4, the mouth, where I know my boundaries and I can push around them, and then last but not least, we can go into the details, adding the various features of the character from hair to clothing, and going in and refining the silhouette and adding some shading, and then touching up everything that we've drawn so far, going back to the eyes, nose and mouth and bringing everything in together. And last but not least, my final tip is to work with light and shade of intensity. Expressions can be a lot of fun, and especially when you hit your stride and you start having a lot of fun creating intense character expressions, it's important to keep in mind, especially for longer term projects, whether it be a comic series or an animation, if you have characters that you want to be relatable and you want people to stick around for the long term to watch, you want to make sure that you use extremity within reason. If anything, it can be really important to learn and become adept at conveying subtle human emotions, things that are generally much more relatable and that we go through on a daily basis. See if you can challenge yourself and create expressions that are subtle and draw people in and are believable. A slight smile or a seductive glance, perhaps a thought that crosses their mind that makes them cringe at their past behavior, or a slight look of skepticism at something that they're not even really paying much attention to. If you can pull that sort of thing off and well in an engaging way, and then bring out the big guns from time to time and create an intense expression, you'll find that people have already been drawn in and are believing everything that's been created so far, to the point where when the extremity hits, it hits with power. And this is where creating intense expressions can be really fun, because we can make people believe it and tell a story with great effectiveness and in a way people are going to remember. The final thing I'm going to wrap up by saying isn't technically one of my top 10 tips, but it's worth bearing in mind that this is a process and it's not something that you're perfect at straight away. I'm not a master myself, and there are many who are much better than me, but at the same time, even they are still learning, and everyone is at a different point in their journey. So whatever stage you're at, just make sure to try and have fun. Don't be too hard on yourself, and use yourself as a reference. Privacy of your own home is probably the best way to do that. Find artists who do a fantastic job and convey things the way you would like to convey them, and try and pinpoint what it is that they're doing that you can apply to your own work. There's no shame in stealing other people's tools and techniques. And at the end of the day, you'll find yourself being able to comfortably create expressions and intensities of emotions that are going to carry your stories and be really enjoyable for you to create and for your viewers and audience to enjoy. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the end of this video and my top tips for facial expressions for your characters. I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, make sure to check out the Faces bundle, which is a further 10% off for those of you who get in there early using the coupon code JAZZA'S, bringing the bundle's total cost to 30% off for a limited time, and it's very affordable anyway, and I highly recommend it for those of you who are interested in having fun with faces. Well, I mean, that is the title of the ebook, so you'd hope it helps you do that. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for now, and until next time! See you later. I bet you're expecting me to say that really over the top. I'm not always obnoxious. That's not true. See you later! Make sure to subscribe to my channel to see more of my videos. And while you're at it, check out my shop where I sell ebooks, brushes, photo references, video courses, and more. There's another video you might enjoy from my channel over there, and you can also check out my behind the scenes daily vlog channel, Daily JAZZA. That's it for now, and until next time, I'll see you later.